All right, I think we can get started. So, hello and welcome everyone to the launch events of One Day Africa and UNZAMEDSA's mentorship campaign. It's wonderful to have everyone joining us, and I hopefully we'll get some more attendees in the coming moments. Just to start things off for the run of show today, we'll first be hearing from Mr. Patrick Myler, a sixth-year medical student at the University of Zambia and UNZAMEDSA Vice President. Following from that, we'll be hearing from Mr. Zachariah Kafuko, the One Day Africa founder and chapter manager. This will then be followed by the panel discussion that I imagine is why we're all here. We're all here to hear from the experts. So for the panel discussion today, please can you post any audience questions into the chat? The button for the chat is at the bottom of the screen. And if anyone has come prepared with questions for the panel already, please feel free to start sending any questions you may have in the chat from now on. Fantastic. Patrick, would you like to get us started, please?
Thank you very much. Yes, good evening, everyone. I'd like to just officially welcome you all to this very important occasion, the first ever, I think, partnership between One Day Sona as well as UNZAMEDSA, our first ever mentorship event. Okay, so this event is very important in the sense that it actually provides us the opportunity through this platform to be able to engage with very established medical doctors. We have Dr. Macha, Dr. Fallah, and Dr. Kanile. Established medical doctors, I think maybe if we can hear from them, at least we'll be inspired as well as they take us through their mentorship event, taking us through exactly how their career path has been. I think it's very important so that even as medical students, we're able to learn from them and be able to make wise decisions in regards to what our career path choices would be. Personally, I'm a sixth-year medical student, just like Devon said. I'm UNZAMEDSA Vice President. So currently, in addition to being the UNZAMEDSA Vice President, I am serving currently this year as an academic assistant leader here at campus at the University of Zambia School of Medicine. Now, as an academic assistant leader, my job, as well as 4 other colleagues of mine who are academic assistant leaders as well, our tasks are actually basically to coordinate the learning of clinical skills to our 4th-year medical students. So in that, we teach them how to prepare for their clinical skills in terms of history taking, as well as examination and procedures that they do get exposed to when they get to clinical practice, clinical rotations rather. So as an academic assistant leader, I actually do engage with a lot of 4th-year students, teaching them. So in a way, I'm actually a mentor, but obviously much lower skills compared to the doctors that we have here. So I actually do believe that mentorship is very important as it guides us to make the correct decisions in as much as our career choices are concerned. So I think, let me not say much. We are here to listen to the established doctors, the professionals, because a mentor is someone who's experienced and is able to guide and actually wants to teach others to learn from their experience. I think we can set the floor for them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Zachariah, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Devon, and thanks, Patrick, for that introduction. And I just want to begin by saying thank you for everyone who's part of this first in the series webinar, to Dr. Macha, to Dr. Fallah, and Dr. Anila, as she'll be connecting later. As Devon has mentioned, my name is Zachariah Kafuko. I started out as a volunteer for COVID-19 Human Challenge Trials. And with Devon, we've been working for some time now on trying to grow the One Day Africa chapter. But specifically, our mandate as One Day Africa and our objective resonates around the area of trying to promote scientific, especially medical research on the African continent. The lessons we've learned through the COVID-19 pandemic that we've all been experiencing, which is still ravaging most parts of the world, is that Africa as a continent has not done its fair share in terms of biomedical research, clinical research, and ultimately contributing to the therapeutics that are being used during this pandemic. And this is, a scenario we believe needs to be changed, needs to be addressed as we go into the future, and especially as we prepare for future pandemics that are very imminent, so to speak. So in our collaboration with UNZAMEDSA, our primary role has been to try and offer the platform for UNZAMEDSA, and also in a way begin to shed light for them in what they should expect when they join the medical practice on the continent. And specifically, we are also working with UNZAMEDSA to, in a more practical way, begin to promote medical research on the African continent. And this will take different forms, which I won't get into right now. But just to maybe zero in on this event, in particular, we thought of having this event because every year we have hundreds of thousands of medical students in different parts of the continent who are in training, and every year thousands are graduating. But the reality on the ground is what they have learned as theory and what their expectations are, what their expectations have been, are not always what they find on the ground. Sometimes they are underwhelmed, sometimes they are overwhelmed. And we thought it was necessary and imperative that we begin to create a platform where our graduating medical students from different countries on the continent graduate and get into the practice with somewhat a balanced view of what the expectations are on the ground. And the only way to achieve this was by calling upon experienced, renowned practitioners on the continent who have walked through this experience. That's why we have the likes of Dr. Fallah and Dr. Macha, whom we believe have gained years of recommendable experience going through the hardships that you are, as medical students, are likely to experience. So there's obviously a great deal of lessons and basically advice that could be received from them. And therefore, I would try not to go beyond this point, and maybe just once again say thank you for our panelists, the speakers, and also for the audience. Please do enjoy, and if you have questions, take note of them. And the last point to mention is that this is not going to be the last of these events. We are going to be making a series of these, so we're hoping to be having one per quarter. And finally, I think on my behalf, I just want to just thank One Day Sooner and all the staff at One Day Africa and UNZAMEDSA that have worked in the background for some time now to get this event to the stage that it has reached now. Thank you so much, Devon.
Great, thank you, Zachariah. I think we can then, with those two introductions, I think we can move on to our panel discussion. I would just like to reiterate Zachariah's point. Please do, ask questions and use the chat. This is an event targeted at getting the students to speak with the professionals who have all the answers to their questions. So please do ask as many questions as possible. And then lastly, before we proceed, I would just like to share two links. The first is to a Facebook group that we're setting up to maintain contact for the coming event. And the second is a Google group for anyone who doesn't actually have Facebook. So the purpose of these two groups is, again, to facilitate a kind of community building from this event, and hopefully to just make it easier to keep everyone involved as this campaign progresses. With that being said, I would like to start by introducing our two panelists for the moment. So to start off with, Dr. Mosoka Fallah. Dr. Mosoka Fallah is a founder and chief executive officer of an NGO in Liberia and the US named Refugee Place International, aimed at addressing the issues to access quality, affordable healthcare that impacts maternal and infant mortality among poor urban and rural dwellers in Liberia, and is about to open an office in Sierra Leone. He was awarded the USAID Liberia Health Worker and the Development Person of the Year in 2017 for his work with Refugee Place International. He was the recent Director General of the National Public Health Institute of Liberia, or NPHIL, that he co-founded. NPHIL was developed as a consequence of the devastation of the 2014 and 2015 Ebola outbreak in Liberia. Dr. Fallah completed his PhD in immunology at the University of Kentucky and his MPH in global health and infectious disease epidemiology at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. For his work building community-level trust in the Ebola response, Dr. Fallah was named a Time Magazine Person of the Year in 2014. He currently serves as the Health Security Consultant for the World Bank in West Africa and is a consultant scientist for Medical Science and Computing, LLC, that provides services to the US National Institute of Health. He is a part-time faculty member at Harvard Medical School. In June of 2019, he visited the Democratic Republic of Congo as part of a team of local NGOs in partnership with York University in Canada to evaluate and advise on the Ebola response. He has recently been appointed as an adjunct faculty at the Center of Emerging Infectious Disease at Boston University in Massachusetts. Then secondly, Dr. Swebby Macha. Professional and intellectually rooted with skills and expertise in obstetrics and gynecology, Dr. Swebby Macha is a renowned professional consultant in these fields. He is currently practicing at the University Teaching Hospital under the Women and Newborn Hospital in Lusaka, Zambia. Dr. Macha is also the National Co-Coordinator for Obstetrics and Gynecology at the Ministry of Health, as well as President of the Zambia Association of Gynecologists and Obstetricians. Dr. Macha holds a Master of Science in Obstetrics and Gynecology and a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, both from the University of Zambia. Thereafter, he attained a medical fellowship in urogynecology from the University of Cape Town. Dr. Macha also holds advanced diplomas in sexual and reproductive health and rights from the University of Lund in Sweden. Over the years, Dr. Macha has produced many research works which have and continue to be published in international journals, and is actively involved in the International Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which is a project aimed at reducing unsafe abortions, not only in Zambia, but across the developing world. As an obstetrician and gynecologist, Dr. Macha is deeply dedicated to further reduce preventable maternal and newborn deaths in Zambia. In order to sustain the prevention and reduction of maternal and newborn mortality, Dr. Macha is actively involved in training both undergraduate and postgraduate medical students, as well as midwives in various colleges and universities countrywide. Thank you again to both of our panelists for joining us today, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. I think it's best to perhaps start our discussion with maybe a broad question. So I'd like to start off just by asking if there is anything or any skill you particularly wished that you knew when you were still a student in university before entering your various industries of medicine in your careers. Dr. Fallah or Dr. Macha, would one of you like to discuss the topic first?
Yeah, I didn't get the question clearly.
Oh, my apologies. All right. So the question is there anything in particular that you wished you knew as a student before entering the medical industry?
Right. Thank you so much. As a medical student, then even before I went into medical school, I had a great passion for medicine. This was mainly driven by one of our neighbors where I grew up in central Zambia. He was a medical doctor, and I was fascinated by the white coat especially. And thereafter, he encouraged me to work so hard in sciences and mathematics, and I immediately set on a path to really join the medical school. And I was among the best students then, way back 30 years ago. We entered medical school, and one of the greatest wish was not only to train as an ordinary medical student. I think I always emphasize even to my young doctors that you need to stand out, walk that extra mile and become that fine doctor. You are isolated from the rest and be considered that doctor really knows their practice. I think it has been something that I have striven in my career, to work hard and then be on top of things. And thereafter, after the medical basic degree, I initially thought I would do cardiology. But then going through the 4 major rotations as an intern, I found a lot of job satisfaction with obstetrics and gyne. The very fact that you see somebody arrive and they go home with a new life, to me was more fascinating, dealing with 2 individuals in one. So that really drove me to see the happiness from a woman who was screaming in labor and then hold a band of joy in the child. I thought that job satisfaction was more in obstetrics and gyne. I think that would be my introduction.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Dr. Fallah, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you very much. I have two very interesting comments. As someone who did the basic sciences before moving to the US, and as a chair of the biochemistry department, I've taught probably 4 or 5 generations of medical doctors now since I came back from the States. One of the things I think most medical students tend to overlook is the ambition that they want to become doctors, but they overlook the basic sciences, the chemistry, the biochemistry, the anatomic, and that is something doctors. They are smart and brilliant. They could make very good clinicians, but if they don't have a good hand around the basic sciences, one, they may not succeed to go into the clinics, and two, when they go in the clinic, they don't become a good clinician. And I've seen that happen when I teach biochemistry or I teach immunology. That's one. The other side to it is a way to say, now that my career has taken a different turn, I'm doing a lot of clinical research and clinical trial. The deficiency I had, I wish I
Dr. Fallah, I think we've lost your audio.
I had a connectivity issue. I was just trying to conclude that my only regret is that I wish upon getting my PhD, I had gotten my MD, not necessarily for treating patients, but I would become a much more complete clinical research or clinical trialist. So nowadays, when I run clinical trial, out of vaccine trials, I have to rely on the physician. And for the monitoring of the patient, I will design a trial. I can follow all of the panels, even though thank God I spent some time in medical school, so I have some general knowledge. But if I had completed as an MD and a PhD, I would have become a much more efficient clinical trialist. I run big clinical trials, the opportunities. But again, so for anyone who wants to go into clinical trial, get your clinical background and then add clinical trial to it. You really can have better edge. For me, I'm one-sided, I know the science and everything. I can design a trial, but I still need a physician. So every time I lead a trial, they have to recruit a site physician to work with me. I wish I had done both. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Dr. Macha, I'd maybe just like to come back to something that you, Dr. Macha, I think you've raised your hand.
No. Let me.
All right. I'd maybe like to come back to something that you mentioned in terms of doing your internships during your kind of later stage of studying. What are maybe some approaches that students can use to get into those internships? What are maybe some internships that, let's put it this way, what are some strategies that students can use to get more benefit out of internships that they may do, and how important are they to someone's kind of growth and development into a medical practitioner?
Right. So one thing, thanks a lot, Jarvis. One thing I would counsel my young doctors is that internship is a period in which you are working under supervision. While you are working under supervision, would love to see that fruit of the training being seen in you. Meaning that as well as you are under supervision, doesn't mean that you are really going to be spoon-fed. Meaning that you need to utilize what you learned in the medical school, both the knowledge, and I can say that the skill is both, impacted in that young doctor. We transfer the knowledge and the skill. It's part of the mentoring process and also the training. So when you graduate as a doctor, either with MBCHB, MBBS, your main task as an intern is now to practice under supervision. Now, while you are practicing under supervision, we would love to see that training, the fruits of that training in you, meaning that you need to take the initiative and want to see you know your limits. Know your limits, when to consult. It's really a sign of part of the assessment that we make. When does this young doctor know how much can he go on his own? Does he identify the diagnosis? And early identification means that this young doctor really knows the problems, whether he's rotating through internal medicine, pediatrics, obstetrics, or surgical specialties like surgery. Would like to see that skill and knowledge, the ability to diagnose, investigate, and manage, of course, under supervision and in consultation with the consultant. So we look out to see if the skill is there, the knowledge, the ability to consult when there is a problem. That's how I'm going to advise my young doctors, that we want to see that skill, we want to see that knowledge and knowing your limits as you rotate. It's a period through which you are going to develop interest in any specialty, because while you are rotating, most surgical specialties will see you through 6 months. The medical ones in our setting, usually it's 3 months, meaning we tend to press more emphasis on the surgical skill, which most young doctors didn't get while they were training. So you take advantage of your internship, not to shy away from learning, because it's again a period of learning when you can be allowed, in inverted commas, to make a small mistake, but under supervision. Because once we sign you off, we don't allow any room for error. That's the message I would give the young doctors.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Dr. Fallah, would you like to comment?
Like I said, I can only speak on the preclinical aspect of medical students and move towards the what I do teach usually on clinical trial design, how to run trials by medical. That's where my strength is. So no comment. All
right. Then there is a question in the chat, and I guess Dr. Macha, you would be, Dr. Fallah, you would be quite well placed to answer this question. Is to what extent does the medical practice in Africa depend on clinical research, or to what extent is clinical research lacked in Africa?
Thank you very much. I think this is one weakness we have. What we call translational research. What we call bench to bedside and bedside to bench. How do you see what you see when you see patients as a doctor? How do you take that to ask some critical questions and improve treatment care? We see that is really lacking. Our doctors are not trained how to conduct clinical trials. Like I said, it takes longer to train a PhD to become a clinical trialist, but once a physician is trained, you can train him to design clinical trial. Because I teach a lot of intern doctors how to design clinical trials and conduct, but it's a seriously lacking field. And so what we have seen, most of the key decisions, findings about how to improve care in Africa is run by the North, the global North, and not the global South, because our physicians and our doctors are not trained how to see. And so that's a big weakness we're trying to change. You see the same patient comes every day, and you treat them for the same disease, but you don't ask the obvious question, and so that's a big need. And so, like, for example, I work with a big project, Vanderbilt University and Massachusetts, where we are not training, we've been training a lot of intern doctors and residents, how to design clinical trial, how to ask key questions, and how to move on to publish. So most of our doctors are good clinicians. I was with my in Sierra Leone, but he was telling me, "Doctor, help me. I don't have publications. I see a lot of cases of hepatitis and liver issues. Can you kindly work with me to improve my ability to design trial and publish this?" This is one area we need to work on the physician. That is not only seeing the patients every day, but the solution that comes are the ones that come with clinical trial. The physicians are all the best people to first see a case. They are the ones to raise the question. So it is a little bit lacking. You look at it in terms of publications, in terms of leading clinical research, is one way we need to train our clinicians. And I think the way to start targeting them is by the time they enter clinicals, we try to start exposing them how to think from the point of view of clinical trial design. This is one area we need to incorporate in our curriculum. Finally, I don't want to take a long time, but one thing we saw when we were launching the Ebola vaccines, when we tried to launch the Ebola vaccines in Liberia, one of our greatest challenges we have for the clinical trial for Ebola was the physicians. Most of our young doctors were discouraging the patients from taking the vaccines. I don't blame them. It's because they have this research literacy. They have not been exposed to clinical trial and the benefit thereof. And so that's one thing we need to start doing to expose young medical doctors. I mean, you're going to treat your patients every year, but I want to encourage them. The doctors who make me, who have a lot to answer the big question.
Great, thank you, Dr. Fallah. Dr. Macha, would you care to comment?
Yeah, I think I would add on, especially the research component. What we have in most of the medical training is a research component towards the end of the training program. This tends to teach the medical student interrogation skills, to interrogate what they are seeing. If they are seeing that a lot of women are arriving in I will give an example, like in my practice in obstetrics and gyne, a lot of young girls are arriving with unsafe abortion from one location. That should make a young medical student interrogating to say, what are the factors that are forcing these young girls to use unsafe methods in this location A? So the medical research component has been included in most of the medical training, further strengthened during the Masters in Medicine training, because you can't graduate if you don't have a thesis in your training. But even the undergraduate, we always tell them that as a young student, your mind should interrogate what you are seeing. These clinical files that you see contain a lot of information which can produce a lot of research papers. So research component, Jevis, is really very, very important. And it's from the undergraduate years that great scientists are actually identified, and they are able to continue even as they pursue their postgraduate training.
Fantastic, thank you for that. I think something that's quite clear is the fact that there is the need for both sides, but however, I imagine that it's, to become a medical doctor in the first place to get your MD, it takes a long time. And then on top of that, to pursue postgraduate studies on top of that's a huge burden on many students. I'm curious if either of you have any, advice perhaps. I know, Dr. Fallah, you mentioned earlier in the conversation, you wish you had the MD before your PhD to help with you with trial design. Do either of you have maybe perhaps any advice on how to approach postgraduate studies, if it's perhaps better to, enter the workforce with an MD to start and then come back to postgraduate studies, or, anything along those lines that may help the students? I don't know who, perhaps Dr. Macha, would you like to?
Let me take it, Javis. Thanks a lot. I would say that the medical training anywhere in the world is quite a long one, and it takes somebody who has long-term plans to enroll. And I usually tell my medical students that the fact that you entered this training, it's a lifetime commitment. It's a lifetime commitment. It's not that you will be suffering, no. But it's the passion to serve that will keep you going. The passion to serve. Have that attachment to your patients and develop that rapport with your patients, and you find that you enjoy your practice. In terms of the undergraduate training, I always advise my students to aim for very good marks. get the skill, and get the knowledge. I think they are basically there for two things: get the knowledge and the skill. Skill acquisition, competence goes like that. Later on, as you mature in your profession, you then become proficient. Now, as to what would you want to do, I always advise, because some young doctors usually say, no, I want to go into a specialty with money, or there is an opportunity to fly out to the US or Australia to do this training. Have the interest in what you want to do. Have the interest. Don't do a specialty just because there is an opening. I told this panel or gathering that I initially wanted to do cardiology because I had a passion when I was a medical student. Mamas used to fascinate me, the sounds from the heart. And when I went through internship, which is a period of self-discovery, because now you face reality. You are now attending to real patients in the real sense. I discovered the love for obstetrics, mainly the happiness, the joy I saw when a baby is born. And there was a lot of thank you after the whole event. You really feel the job satisfaction. Get into a specialty you have strong interest in so that you enjoy your practice. It's a long career, so you shouldn't be miserable. Enjoy the practice by having interest in what you are doing. Don't go into a subspecialty just because there was money or a training opportunity. Have it from deep down your heart that indeed I want to do orthopedic surgery or dental. You are happy. That's the only way you enjoy your practice.
Yeah, what Dr. Macha said. I mean, I imagine spending 9.5 years in the US going to school, right? And so I was a poor broke student in the US going to school from one state to another state. But I was passionate about it. And so money was not ever the thing on my mind. The thing on my mind was I wanted to do this. I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted to become a scientist. I wanted to design vaccines. When I went to the lab, nobody wanted to do the work, but I knew I wanted to work in Africa. And so everyone was studying cancer. I did vaccine, streptococcus pneumonia. Like Doc said, I think when you have the passion, the money should come last. And I think, I honest to God believe that if you go for the competency and the skill set, because you are passionate, the money will come to follow you. You know, I mean, imagine I'm in Sierra Leone and I got the World Bank hire me here in Sierra Leone to consult for them, you know. And so I think you just get the skill, get the passion, get the training, and forget about at the early stage, the prestige, the money. Once you get them, you get the skill set and you're passionate and you are doing it because of happiness, the rest will add up. And so even if the journey is long, it's not going to seem very long because every day you wake up, you are happy for new skills and new learning. And I think in our case, most of the postgraduate work we had was funded. That was the good news. Most of my training was funded. I don't know in Africa, but I want to need to fight a little bit harder to create funding stream for graduate students. Once students are smart enough to start the postgraduate training, we need to find means to fund them. And, you know, the undergraduate year, but the postgraduate, maybe trying to find external funding. With the COVID coming now, knowing that we need more research scientists, more research doctors, being able to help to fund them, fund their research when they're in the postgraduate to get a very talented student, is going to be the way forward for Africa. You know, put money into for graduate students, especially the talented ones that have studied their lesson hard and have the skill set. We need to invest into them. And, you know, yes, thank you. So the passion, finding funding for them. Once you're passionate, the years will be long, but you will not feed them much. And then once you get a skill set, I'm very sure there is a God that tend to reward our commitment into this profession.
Great, thank you to both of you again. And actually looking at our questions now, I feel like we've answered the first one. So the first question was how to approach the issue of finance and earning capability as a factor in selecting a specialty, and how much it played a role in deciding what roles you took up to get where you are today. So I think we cover that one quite accurately right now. Then there is another question posed by the audience that says, are opportunities to use knowledge gained from medical education outside of a clinical setting really available in Africa, in Zambia in particular? Or is it more likely that doctors have to practice in a traditional way following graduation?
Right. Thank you so much, Jervis. I think it caught my attention. Even the other one, there's one of the charts on how can one survive the preclinical years. It's a very interesting, because in my training as a medical student, this was one of the most difficult periods when you are doing the basic sciences, especially anatomy lectures. I'm made to believe all of us are in the medical field. I think one of the key issues that any medical doctor, a medical student undergoes is the cadaver dissection. I think it's one of the most scarily in the preclinical years, and it can make or break a medical student. And it's what I would describe as the baptism into the medical field, because once you have undergone it, you never do anything else other than medicine. It's one of the moments we learn the human body by dissecting it. How do you survive those years? It's a determination. Know why you entered the medical field. Your main aim is to graduate as a doctor. You should look at the bigger picture. Do invest in your training at the formative years. Lay a very good foundation. Even for a house, if the foundation is shaky, that house won't last. So is the medical training. The preclinical years are the foundation. It can make you a bad, good doctor or a fine doctor who is above the rest through investing in your preclinical years. It's a time you need to work so hard. If it means breaking nights, I always advise my students, study hard. The foundation of medicine is preclinical, the anatomy, the physiology, the pathology, the biochemistry, pharmacology, all those, they are going to make you a good doctor. If you are able to understand them, your clinical years are just now translating those basic sciences into applied sciences now, and you make a very good doctor. In terms of training, one thing I always emphasize is for you to make progress in medicine. I am one of the supporters of having your basic training. You can do your master's in medicine in Africa, but I always emphasize that get on a plane, explore medicine even in the first world, so that you rub shoulders with your peers. Even if it means just attachment, for example, in Cape Town or in Harvard University, you are not going to be the same. You learn a lot. Get on the plane and advance your career out. I'm not saying Africa's inferior services, but I'm a believer in interacting with your peers from all over the world. You learn from each other, they also learn from you. In that way, that's why in most associations, the president of the Zambia Association of Gynecologists, our mother body is FIGO, They are based in the UK. We always have 3 years where obstetricians meet. The last one we held was in Brazil. I've never failed to attend in the last 15 years. It's the highest level at which you interact with your peers and learn from each other. So my advice would be, yes, do your training in Africa, but move out to learn from the other parts of the world. You can go to China, you can go to Russia, UK, USA, and bring back the good practices back into your country. In a similar way, we have our colleagues who travel from Europe to Africa, and they do learn a lot from us also. So I always say it's brain circulation. Circulate the skill and the knowledge globally. Don't just stay in your country, get exposed. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Macha. Dr. Fallah, would you like to comment on either of those two questions?
Yeah, a couple of things. Yes, there are limited opportunities. You may see on the surface that there are limited opportunities for clinical trial, and so you resort to traditional medicine, but you need to open your eyes that there are opportunities all around you. For example, Dr. Mondowa Davidson is a colleague of mine from Zambia. He and I just spoke recently on NCD in Africa in the midst of COVID-19. He's a vice president for Africa. So one thing is trying to find important mentors in your area of interest. Today we'll have the social network. I will teach a networking to some of the medical students and say the social network, the LinkedIn, the Twitter, there are people that will share commonality with you, and many of the professionals will always respond to you when you reach out to them. Many persons have succeeded in their area want to produce after their can. So build network. Doug spoke about leaving your country, but even if you can't leave your country at a time, invest in scientific journals. What is your area? So basically, I know in Africa we are taught to read textbooks, but the textbooks are old by several years because textbooks are made from scientific journals. So read scientific journals. From reading scientific journals, let's say you are interested in pediatrics. You might see a scientist who has written a lot in pediatric. You reach out to them. Reach out to them. I want to work with you. I want to learn more from you. That's going to be very important. And nowadays, there are several grants that are now coming for Africa. The European Union have the EDCTP grant. Recently, the way they read the grant is that it's a north-south approach. We recently wrote a big grant on malaria treatment in Africa using innovative treatment. We have 5 countries in Africa together with the UK and Netherlands. So there are grants from the Canadian government. The NIH has grants. Investigate some of your professors at your medical school. Some of them may be leading this grant and this collaboration. And so basically you need to leave the textbook a bit because medicine is evolving at a very alarming rate that you need to know what is happening on the cutting edge. So getting into journals, finding good mentors in your country, out of your country, puts you above everyone else because you know what is obtaining beyond what you have. And lastly, all the challenges you see in your country are opportunities. All the challenges you see in healthcare, each of them present to you a unique opportunity to find solution. Those of us that went through the Ebola in West Africa have been able to use that to build a huge research platform. So the opportunity you see in your country, in your area of medical care, see them as an opportunity that you can use to build trial to find answer upon and find the right mentors across the world. Many of the professionals will be happy to reach out to you. Once you find them and you reach, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I think then we can move on to another question that says, to what extent do academic research papers for postgraduate studies impact or influence decision-making process at the hospital management level? I feel like this is fairly relevant given what we were just discussing.
Right. Thank you so much, Javis. Very good question. Most of the postgraduate papers actually inform policy because they are based on the clinical findings. And we make sure during the proposal stage that there is relevance in the research that a postgraduate does. So we really put emphasis on research that will translate into policy in most of the postgraduates. So it's usually goes through a vigorous process before it can even reach the ethical committee. At departmental level, we scrutinize the proposal. The postgraduate student makes a presentation in front of his peers, consultants, and public health specialists from the medical school. So we make sure that it's a relevant research that will translate into policy. So indeed, these papers play a very big role in shaping the practice of medicine.
Fantastic. Dr. Fallah, would you like to comment?
I mean, Dr. Macha has touched it. For example, we published a very novel finding on survival and breastfeeding. You know, we clearly established that we published a paper in New England Journal of Medicine on the issue of sexual encounter by Ebola survival, and WHO adopted that as a policy. So obviously, how do most of these policies we have for treatment guidelines? They come from research, very good research in Lancet, in big paper. So basically, like Dr. Macha said, it's going to be that. How do you think that you as a consumer, a medical doctor, how do you think the decisions are made as to where you should treat? For example, WHO has the essential medicine list for different diseases. Those lists and policies WHO creates come from research. WHO have policy guys in Geneva that say and pull all the research and say, okay, going forward, this is what we should do to treat cardiology, this disease condition. And so very seriously to improve on the patient care, by the time you enter into your master's, start to address an issue. Like I said, I can't re-emphasize it. All the challenges you see as a clinician, there are opportunities to make a difference, to do a translational research. Don't hit your head on the wall. Don't get discouraged. My patients are dying. My patients are coming late. Let's investigate the why. And by thoroughly investigating and publishing in a peer review, you are going to save other lives. Like we have this big trial called the CHAMP study. The CHAMP study does autopsy for babies who die. And the motto is that using the dead to help the living. And so they do this autopsy and understand the cause of death. But the findings from the cause of death are able to help those who are alive. So that's very critical that you see the problem you see before your clinical challenges as a way to help those other people in the future by investigating, publishing a paper, collaborating with others, and that inform policy both in your country and by the WHO. Very, very critical. And the best people to do that are the clinicians. Who discover HIV/AIDS? They were the clinicians. You know, I do outbreak investigation when I teach my students. The best people to identify a disease for us are the clinicians. The clinicians are very key and critical. The inquisitive clinician with a good eye and mind is a way for us to be able to identify diseases that we can.
Fantastic. There's two more comments. Well, there's two other questions in the chat. I'm going to try to pair together. So Shalona asks, how best can you apply yourself in the clinical years to attain the best medical skills and knowledge in the Zambian setup? And I'm going to pair that with Andrew, where Andrew asks, how can he enjoy the clinical years?
Right. Another very good question. I tell my students that you can't learn medicine by correspondence. You need to be on the ward. Your patients actually are your teachers, what you see. Not one same condition can present the same in different patients. They might, in most cases, present differently. So unless you are on the ward, and your main teachers actually are the patients themselves and also the consultants, the registrars in that department, you need to learn from everybody. They are actually there to transfer that skill and knowledge to you. So in simplicity, I would tell you as a medical student that be on the ward, be in theater. Even if you are just observing, that is part of the training. You observe, the next you assist, The next will allow you to attempt, for example, suturing a tear. If you don't do that during training, it will really be very difficult for you when you have qualified to start learning how to suture an episiotomy or even deliver a baby. So my advice to my medical student, how to handle the clinical years, be on the ward, be in theater, learn even from the lowest of the health workers. Most of us obstetricians were actually learned more from the midwives. So humble yourself and you are going to learn a lot.
Thank you. Then there is two other questions I'm going to pair up and pose to Dr. Fallah. So it says, from Sumi, good evening, Dr. Fallah mentioned that he knew he wanted to work in Africa. I would like to know what motivated him to work in Africa. And then I'm going to pair that with Osama, who asks, how would you fare students graduating out of the Zambian medical training system against those in countries such as South Africa, UK, Europe, India, etc.?
Well, from the one, when as a young medical student, I was fortunate to have worked with Dr. Swebby on the war front. And it was just that when I went to the US and I had the opportunity to leave medical school to go to the US, I knew I wanted to come back home. When the day I left the hospital, I told most of my patients I was going to come back. That was just something I knew I was going to come back one day. And so my first master's degree, I did malaria. Everything, I was very deliberate what I did. Nothing I studied that was not specific to Africa. My first master, I tracked the emergence of chloroquine resistance in Africa. So that told you every disease that I studied in the US was a disease that was unique to Africa. Then I moved to this very big lab that was doing cancer biology. I asked myself, what can I do that will benefit Africa? And so basically when I went there, I took streptococcus pneumonia. 90% of it is in Africa. When I left and went to Harvard, all of the work I did, all my project, as a matter of fact, all of the group project, the student project we did, I always convinced my friends to do project about Africa. I remember I was doing a project on maternal mortality in Liberia. So I was passionate. I knew I was going to come back to work. I didn't know when I was going to come. I thought I was going to start. Okay, then I started the NGO. I started my NGO while I was still a graduate student. I started to use my graduate assistantship to raise money and send back home. So before I could even graduate, I already was starting the NGO in the US and Liberia with my classmates in the US. So I was very deliberate. I was so intentional of coming back. But I thought I was going to stay and work in the US with the World Bank. I was too convinced that was going to be the way, then I would come back later. But then I got an assignment as an associate professor with Indiana University to come back to work on a project for Liberia. And so I came back, worked on the project funded by USAID. As the project was closing down and Ebola started. And so the university had a ticket for me to fly back to the US. And I told them I cannot come. The university was like, what? Mosoka, are you not coming back? I said, no, I can't leave my country facing Ebola and come back to the US. And I turned down the offer. I stayed and I stayed for 1 extra year. I mean, it was sad. The university could not allow me to go back on campus. When I completed and went back, I spoke at MIT and Harvard. But Indiana would not allow me on campus. They said, I cannot come back on campus. But I didn't regret it. I had a decision that the knowledge I had, I wanted to give it back home in Africa. And so I was very intentional. For some reason, I think being on the front lines, working with Dr. Swebby in the midst of the Civil War, all the things I saw made me know that the continent had more work and I needed to be on the continent to do. So I was too intentional in all I did. All my studies in the US, all the papers I wrote, all was very much towards Africa. Maybe it was unique to me, and I knew that I wouldn't make a lot of money when I come. I wouldn't get a lot of prestige when I come. But unfortunately for me, it is working in Africa that I've gotten the prestige, that I've gotten the money I wanted. It is working in Africa that got me to be a visiting professor at Harvard and at Boston University. So I was just deliberate that I wanted to work in Africa. But then at the end result, I can't regret it. Every one day that I sacrificed to be in Africa, I have not had regrets about it. But I was very intentional from the very beginning. I wanted to come back home in Africa and work.
Great, thank you for that. I think there's about 3 more questions left in the chat, so we can hopefully try to get through all of them. But Sophia asks, what matters more when choosing a speciality? Is it passion for what you do, or should you choose what you're good at? Especially if what you have passion for isn't exactly the speciality you're best at.
Right. Very interesting. Normally, if you have a passion for something, you work towards perfecting your competence towards that. So I always tell, if I have the passion for cardiology, I really want to perfect my practice towards the heart medicine. If it's obstetrics, basically when you have the passion, you work towards perfecting the medical art. So in the end, the two move together hand in and glove. So basically, the passion will lead into you developing the competence. And I've seen one which talks about how to handle stress. I think that's one area of the sides. Yes, very, very important. It's quite a stressful training. We demand a lot from our students, a lot of time. We give them a lot of assignments, and we expect you to perform. And then there is also learning of new things where you have anxiety, you are being watched by your friends and the nurses. So what I would advise my student is not to take to any substance abuse, alcohol or tobacco, no. How do you handle that stress is to venture into exercise. I found it very useful. I used to do a lot of jogging, a lot of martial arts, just to take off that pressure. Find something beneficial to do. Don't drown your stress into alcohol or substance abuse. So my advice would be, find, if you enjoy music, play some soothing music. Taking a walk with friends helps you to come out of that pressure, other than abusing alcohol, tobacco, or anything. And then right, I think the other one was just a comment, I think from Ethiopia, where someone earned a first degree in nursing and general public health, and she's following our discussion and saying we are inspiring her. Thank you so much.
I think there is maybe perhaps one question left in the chat that's gone unanswered, and asks, at what stage in one's medical school journey should I seek out mentors? Yeah, Dr. Macha or Dr. Fallah would either like to answer this last question.
Oh, the mentors. I would say that from the foundation. From the foundation, and I'm happy the vice president of the medical students from Zambia is here. They've ably formed the mentorship groups, especially to the first-year medical students. These are the ones who need guidance. They are entering the career. They are hearing a lot of things being talked about, how difficult the training is. So I would say that the mentorship is from foundation.
Fantastic. Dr. Fallah, would you like to comment on this last question?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. You can never succeed. You know, there's something we call the relationship currency. One, most of the key decisions about your life, you as a doctor, is going to be made in your absence. You are not going to be there. It is important that you have a key mentor who cares and loves you, because sometimes those will make the decision that affects your life and your career, whether it is going to graduate school. And I've succeeded so much and so well because of mentors. You need to find them, deliberately reach out to them to social media, let them care for you at your university, but you need mentorship all through your career. So the earlier you get a mentor, 1 or 2 mentors who genuinely care for you, who find time for you to protect you, is so important. The person that love you enough that you can be bold to share everything with them. You want to find a mentor, because honest to God, key decisions about your life and career will be made, and they need a mentor to guide you. We all make mistakes. If you don't have a mentor, then you will make mistakes that others have made and they can advise you. I mean, your career, whatever you do in your studies, somebody know the easier way to study a course. So find some of your instructor, some of your senior colleagues, even as an undergraduate, come to the medical school, talk to other people. Mentors they are indispensable to your career. You just can't survive without mentors that care for you, that will check on you, that believe in you, that want you to succeed. Even to find someone who trusts you, it can help to reduce the stress and to tell you, I'm there for you, I will be there for you, talk to me anytime. So start at any time, like Macha said, find a mentor. It can be even your colleague and instructor. Be courageous. Write to somebody you admire. Tell them you want them to be your mentor. All they can tell you is no, but don't be shy. Tell them you want them to be your mentor. Relate to them. Stay in contact with them. So critical for your career. So critical for moving to the next stage in your life. Mentorship.
Fantastic. Again, I'd like to say, thank you to both of our panelists again. Oh, I see there was one more question put in the chat. I'm afraid, everyone, we are at time. Briefly, Dr. Macha or Dr. Fallah, would you care to answer the question of how do you cope with failure in medical school by Yvonne?
Yeah, very interesting. Quickly, I would say that never give up. When you fall down, it's not the number of times that you fall that matters, it's the number of times you stand up. Learn from your mistakes and work hard to perfect them. Never give up. I personally, in my first year of medical training, I failed one course and was asked to repeat the whole year. One of the professors encouraged me, and from there, I never looked back. So never give up.
Failures are stepping stones. Always see failure as the ingredient for success. There is no man I know who is great who did not experience failure. As all great men, the things that hold all of us together is failure. All men who succeeded, the one ingredient that they have is failure. So know this and accept failure. That you get failure will come your way. If you haven't had one, you are going to have failure. Accept it, learn from it, and move ahead. Failure is part of our growing process. It's part of our development process. Failure will come. Accept it, learn from it, and move ahead.
Fantastic. I think those are both two very powerful points to also end on, and very upbeat and motivational. Thank you again, Dr. Macha and Dr. Fallah, for your time. I found this discussion fascinating. I hope all the students watching did as well. There was one question in the chat that said, host menu, can you share a list of the grants mentioned? Again, these are the kind of things that we set the Facebook group and the Google group up for. So please, everyone, make sure you're joining those if you'd like to keep in touch with the kinds of content we could be sharing, such as lists of grants. In addition, this entire event has been recorded, so if anyone wants to check back on anything that's been said, it'll be up on One Day Sooner's YouTube channel in the coming days, and again, we'll share it onto the groups. But again, one last time, thank you again, Dr. Macha, Dr. Fallah, and yeah, I hope everyone found this discussion very insightful and helpful. Go well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.